Okay, good morning, third grade. I want everyone to think about something that made them happy this week or something that you're happy about while we wait for everyone to join. And then when everyone joins, we're going to have two or three of you share out something that made you happy to get us started. Okay, so based on these pictures, what do you think we're learning about today? That's right, you guessed it. We're going to start learning about shapes. So after today's lesson, you're going to be able to classify and draw shapes with specific attributes focusing on triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, octagons, cubes, cones, and pyramids.
Okay, let's start by taking a minute to think about what we learned in second grade relating to shapes. Go ahead and pause your video and write down some shapes you know under the K in your KWL chart. Join us again by turning your video back on when you have an answer. Can I have one or two students share out what they wrote down? Great job. In second grade, you learned how to draw 2 and 3-dimensional shapes. Today, we will be learning about how 2D and 3D shapes are classified. Today in class, you will be learning how 2D and 3D shapes are classified, what the different attributes of 2D and 3D shapes are and how they help you classify shapes. And lastly, you'll be learning where you can find shapes in the real world.
Okay, so let's get started and let's see where you guys have seen shapes before. Maybe you've seen them when you went out shopping, or maybe you saw them throughout your home, or maybe on a walk. What we're gonna do is you're gonna pause your video here in a second. You're gonna click the link and you're gonna enter some responses of where you've seen shapes before and what you saw. So some examples that I came up with is an ice cream cone, a smiley face, a slice of pizza, or a stop sign. So now go ahead, pause your video, enter your responses, and then I will show you our poll and come up with our common answer. Okay, so it looks like some of the common responses, our most common responses to class is a stop sign. Now, can someone tell me what shape a stop sign is? That's right, it's an octagon. Okay, let's get back. Okay, so the difference between 2D and 3D shapes. 2D shapes have two dimensions, just width and height, and these shapes look like they're flat. So think of it like if you drew a smiley face on a piece of paper or a circle, that you're drawing a 2D shape. A 3D shape has three dimensions, width, height, and depth. These shapes appear to have thickness and depth and are a solid figure. So if you think about it and you're playing with your wooden blocks and you have a rectangle in your hand, that would be a 3D shape.
So after reviewing the differences between 2D and 3D shapes on the last slide, take a minute to pause your video once again and write down 2 or 3 shapes you want to learn about on your KWL chart. And then we will continue. So some shapes we're going to focus on, some 2D shapes we'll focus on are squares, circles, triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, and octagons. Some 3D shapes we're going to focus on are cubes, cones, and pyramids.
Okay, so what is the first way we can classify a shape? We can do that by their sides or faces. So right here, there's a square. You can see the arrows pointing to a face. It's the flat side or also a face of a 3D shape. Or also, if you look at the 2D shape over here, it's the edge. It's also an edge. Also, it's the straight line that makes up a 2D shape. Another way we can classify a shape is by the vertices or a vertex. If you look over here at the pyramid, right here, it's the corner where the two lines come together. That's also a vertex. And over here on the 2D shape, you can also see it's pointing to the point. The vertices are also the angular points on a figure, and many people think of them as corners, but in math, we're going to call them vertices.
So some important vocabulary to always remember. Does anyone know what attributes are? Good. Attributes are properties or characteristics of a shape in which we use to classify the shape. Next, we have symmetry. Symmetry is when both sides of a shape are the same. Angles are when two rays meet at a common point and they are measured in degrees. Lastly, can anyone tell me what an edge is? Great. An edge is a line segment where two faces meet. So now we will be talking about 2D shapes and their attributes.
Okay, so make sure we're taking good notes so we can fill out our KWL chart at the end. So our first shape we're going to be focusing on is a square. I want you guys to all count the sides and keep the number in your head. All right, a square has 4 straight sides. All sides are equal in length, and there's 4 angles. Each angle is 90 degrees. A circle has a curved side, and it has symmetry. If something has symmetry, it means if you cut it in half, each side will be exactly the same.
So the third shape we're going to be talking about is a triangle. Can anyone tell me how many sides a triangle has by looking at the pictures to the right? Good job. A triangle has 3 sides. The 3 sides of a triangle may or may not be equal in length. Along with the sides, all angles may or may not be equal. Next is a quadrilateral. If you look at the 5 images to the right, you will notice that a quadrilateral has 4 sides. They have 4 vertices, and all interior angles add up to 360 degrees.
Okay, our next shape is a pentagon. The pentagon has 5 sides and 5 angles, and all sides are straight. Nothing is curved on this shape. You can look right here to the side. There's an example for you to look at. Here's our next shape, an octagon. Can anyone think of an example of an octagon? If you remember back to our common response on our poll that we just took as a class, we all put in that we know what a stop sign is, and a stop sign is an octagon. Octagons have 8 sides and 8 angles. All angles are equal and all sides are straight. The sum of the angles on the inside adds up to 1080 degrees.
Okay, so after learning about all the 2D shapes, we will begin a 2D shape learning check. We're going to check to see what you guys have learned so far. So we're going to go to a website. Everyone's going to pull out a piece of paper and a pencil. As each shape appears on the screen with a question, you will write down your answer. When everyone finishes writing their answer, you will hold your paper up so we can see if you got the answer correct. Okay, so for the first one, it is how many vertices does this shape have? You're going to write down your answer and show it to this camera when you're done. Good. A square has 4 vertices. So we'll do one more. How many vertices does this shape have? Write your answer down again and show it to the screen. And this has 6 vertices. Great job, everyone. So moving on, now we're going to talk about some 3D shapes.
Okay, so our first 3D shape may look like something we've seen before. If you look at the faces, they are what shape? That's right, they're squares. So if you remember back to 2D shapes, those ones are flat. So a cube has 6 square faces. It has 8 points and 12 edges. An example of this will be maybe like a dice, how you can hold it in your hand and it has width and depth. Our second one is a cone. A cone has a circular face. If you look down right here at the bottom, the flat edge is a circle. It has 0 edges and 1 vertex, which is right here at the point. An example of this would maybe be like an ice cream cone. You can hold it in your hand and it's an object that you have.
Next, we're going to talk about a pyramid. So a pyramid has at least 3 triangular faces. Does anyone know where 1 vertex would be on a pyramid? Good, 1 vertex is at the top of it. And a pyramid only has 1 base. Okay, now I'm going to have everyone turn the camera off and complete a couple exit questions independently by clicking on the link that I will post in the chat. Okay, so the link is in the chat. Everyone's going to go click on that. and finish that. When you're finished, turn your camera back on so we know you're done. Okay, now that everyone is finished, we'll continue on.
Okay, so I want you guys to think about the lesson and what we learned today. And I want you to think back on all the shapes, look at your notes if you have to. And what you're going to do is you're going to talk to a parent or your stuffed animals in the room, or maybe even your animal, your fish, your dog, your cat, whatever you'd like. So, what I want you to do, I want you to think about these two questions. What 2D shape that you learned from today's lesson? Think of one, and then think of how many sides it has. And I want you to share that answer with whoever you choose. And also, I want you to think of a 3D shape you learned from today's lesson, along with how many vertices it has. Now, if you are stuck on that tricky vocab word, don't forget you can go back to the video and look at the vocab words that we had on the slide. Once you've talked about it, I want you to fill out the L section of your KWL chart. Hopefully you took good notes because this should be pretty easy. We're going to go ahead and fill in all the shapes that you learned today right under the L so we know that you remember. Now, if you still need help after this lesson and you are stuck on some homework questions or an assignment later and you think you might remember but you kind of forgot, here's a video from the Khan Academy that goes over some helpful things to remember about shapes. And if you still need help after you watch the video or you go back and watch this lesson, don't be afraid to send us a message.